situated right at the heart of northern Italy's most famous lake. This village holds a geographic position that is as unique as it is beautiful. If you look at a map, Lake Como is shaped like an inverted letter Y, and Bellagio sits exactly at the point where the three branches meet, the branch of Como to the southwest, Lecco to the southeast, and the northern branch stretching up toward the Alps. But Bellagio is more than just a strategic point on a map. For centuries, this promontory has been a place of quiet luxury and inspiration. Its history stretches back to the Roman era when it was known as Bislacus, meaning two lakes, a nod to the panoramic views that surround you here. Since then, it has transformed into a playground for the aristocracy. By the 18th and 19th centuries, noble families from Milan and beyond built the magnificent villas and manicured gardens that still define the coastline today. Today, Bellagio balances that historic grandeur with a relaxed, dulce vita charm. It is a maze of steep cobblestone staircases, lined with colourful pastel buildings, silk artisans, and small cafes. So, take a deep breath, relax, and let's explore Bellagio together. To really understand Bellagio, you have to look beyond the postcards. This isn't just a pretty village, it is a geographic miracle. We are standing at the very tip of the Larian Triangle. It's the wedge of land that splits Lake Como into its distinctive inverted Y shape. To the left is the Como branch, wild and elegant. To the right, the Lecco branch, rugged and dramatic. And straight ahead, the northern arm stretches up toward the Swiss Alps. This unique position creates a microclimate that is unusually mild for being this close to the mountains, almost Mediterranean. It's why you see olive trees and cypress groves growing alongside alpine flora. History here runs deep. The Romans were the first to realize the potential of this spot. In the 1st century, Pliny the Younger, a famous Roman magistrate and author, actually owned 2 villas right here in Bellagio. He called them comedy and tragedy, though looking at these views, it is hard to imagine anything tragic about this place. For centuries after the Romans, this was a fortified outpost. In the Middle Ages, the village was a chessboard for regional powers, shifting between the control of nearby Como and the Dukes of Milan. You can still feel that medieval layout today in the Borgo, the historic centre. It wasn't built for cars, it was built for defence and for foot traffic, with those steep stone staircases designed to lead directly from the harbour up to the castle that once stood at the very top of the hill. But the Bellagio we see today, the town of elegance and luxury, really was born in the 1800s. This was the golden age of the Grand Tour, a rite of passage for European aristocrats. They came here in droves. Famous figures like the composer Franz Liszt spent time here. In fact, he famously said that he wrote some of his best music on these shores because the beauty was so overwhelming. Even today, there is a plaque in town commemorating his stay. By the late 19th century, Bellagio had transformed from a fishing village into an international resort. It became a favourite haunt for European monarchs and, later, Hollywood royalty. Culturally, the lifeblood of this region isn't just tourism, it is silk. Since the 1400s, the Lake Como area has been the silk capital of Europe. While the factories are mostly in the city of Como now, you will see silk boutiques all over these streets. It is a trade that has survived wars and economic shifts, remaining a symbol of the area's craftsmanship. Today, the village has a permanent population of around 3,000 people. But the historic centre, the Borgo, is home to only a few hundred residents. It creates a fascinating rhythm. During the day, the streets buzz with visitors from all over the world. But if you stay past sunset, when the last ferries leave, a hush falls over the town, and you can almost hear the echoes of those 19th century poets and aristocrats who first put this pearl on the map. It is a place suspended in time, balancing its role as a global icon with the soul of a quiet Italian village.
Perfect cut. Nice.
Ça va انت انا مشيت 6 قبل كده.
Leaving the lakeside behind, we now start our ascent on the Salita Serbaloni. In Bellagio, the streets don't just go left or right, they go up. These steep, stepped lanes are known as saliti, and this one is arguably the most famous of them all. It acts as the main artery connecting the harbour below to the historic centre, the Borgo, up on the hill. As you walk, notice the stones beneath your feet. This is ciottolato, traditional cobblestone paving that was designed centuries ago not for aesthetics, but for grip. In the days before tourism, these stairs were essential for moving goods and people from the water to the castle and market square above. Today, the Salita Serbaloni is the heartbeat of the village's commerce. The buildings lining these steps, painted in those warm Lombard shades of ochre and terracotta, are home to local artisans. You will find leather workshops, jewellers, and, of course, the silk shops that this region is famous for. It takes a little effort to climb, but the design is ingenious. The steps are wide and shallow, what the Italians call donkey steps, meant to be taken at a slow, rhythmic pace. It forces you to slow down, to look at the details, and to catch your breath while admiring the view. And if you turn around, you get one of the most photographed views in all of Italy. The narrow walls frame the lake perfectly, a reminder that no matter how high you climb in this town, the water is always the protagonist.
Running with my head, my pants gonna touch.
If the Salita is the town's backbone, then this square, Piazza Giuseppe Mazzini, is its living room. For most visitors, this is the very first handshake with Bellagio, since the only way to reach the village for centuries was by water this waterfront piazza was designed to impress. It acts as a grand stage, directly facing the lake, where travellers would disembark and immediately be greeted by the elegance of the town. The architecture here is distinctly different from the medieval alleys we just saw. You will notice the elegant porticos, covered walkways lined with arches. These were built to protect merchants and pedestrians from the sun and rain, allowing life to continue here regardless of the weather. Today, they shelter some of the town's most popular cafes and hotels. The square is named after Giuseppe Mazzini, one of the key figures of the Risorgimento, the movement that unified Italy in the 19th century. While you will find squares named after him all over the country, few have a view quite like this. But there is a small, often overlooked detail here that tells a tougher story. If you look closely near the porticos, you will find a dark stone column marked with dates, specifically 1829 and 1868. These are flood markers. They show just how high the lake has risen in the past, reminding us that for all its beauty, living this close to the water comes with a price. Right now, though, it is simply the perfect place to sit, order an espresso, and watch the ferries dance across the water.
Hello. Yes.
To understand where we are, you have to picture the map. Lake Como isn't shaped like a circle or an oval. It is shaped like an inverted letter Y. This distinctive form is the result of massive geological forces. Thousands of years ago, the Adda Glacier moved down from the Alps. And when it hit the hard rock of the promontory we are standing on, it split. It carved out two deep furrows, the Como branch to the southwest and the Lecco branch to the southeast, while the northern arm stretches up towards the mountains. That glacial history is also why this water is so remarkably deep. This is one of the deepest lakes in Europe. In some places, the bottom plunges down over 400 meters. That is more than 1,300 feet. To put that in perspective, the bottom of this lake is actually about 200 meters below sea level. But for most of the history, people didn't come here for the geology. They came for the beauty. The Romans called it Larius, a name you still see today in local businesses. And they were the first to build villas on these shores. But the real transformation happened during the Renaissance, and later the Romantic era. This region became the playground for the aristocracy of Milan and the royalty of Europe. They built the villas that line the shore, creating a landscape where nature and architecture are perfectly balanced. There is also a hidden industry here. Since the 1400s, when the Duke of Milan encouraged the planting of mulberry trees, this area has been the silk capital of the Western world. Even today, the biggest fashion houses in Paris and New York often source their finest silk right here from the factories around Como. Today, tourism focuses on what we call the Golden Triangle. It is the area in the centre of the lake connecting Bellagio, Varenna and Menaggio. These towns are linked by a constant rhythm of ferries, which are the lifeblood of the lake, in a place where the roads are narrow and winding. The water is the true highway. It is a place where the grandeur of the Alps meets the softness of the Mediterranean, a contrast that has captivated travellers for 2,000 years. After a short walk from the centre, we reach the very edge of the peninsula, Punta Spartivento. The name itself tells you exactly what happens here. In Italian, spartire means to divide and vento means wind. This is the point that divides the wind. It is a literal description. Because of the lake's unique shape, the thermal winds that blow from the north and south, known locally as the Tavano and the Breva, often meet and split right at this promontory. It is why you might feel a sudden fresh breeze the moment you step onto this point, even on a warm day. Geographically, this is the most significant spot on Lake Como. We are standing at the exact centre of the inverted Y. To your left, you have the branch we just came from, leading down to Como. To your right is the wilder, rugged branch of Lecco. And straight ahead is the northern arm stretching all the way up towards Switzerland and the Rhätischen Alps. It is one of the few places on land where you can see all three branches of the lake at the same time. Unlike the busy shops of the Borgo, this area is a park, a place designed for stillness. It feels like the end of the world, or at least the end of the land. It is a favourite spot for locals to come, sit on a bench and just watch the boats navigate the currents where the three waters meet. It is the perfect place to pause and realise just how small we are against this backdrop of water and stone. So, once you are here, how should you actually spend your time? Well, if you visit only one landmark, make it the Gardens of Villa Melzi. Unlike many of the private villas that remain closed to the public, this 19th century masterpiece is open to everyone. It stretches along the lakefront and is famous for its botanical richness, especially the azaleas and rhododendrons that bloom in spring. It was the first English-style garden on the lake, designed to look natural but actually planned down to the last leaf. You can walk through the Japanese pond, visit the small museum in the orangery, and see the famous statue of Dante and Beatrice gazing out at the water. If you want a view that is a bit harder to earn, you should try to visit the park of Villa Serbelloni. Be careful not to confuse this with the Grand Hotel by the water. The park is located high up on the promontory and is owned by the Rockefeller Foundation. You can't just wander in, you have to book a guided tour. But it is worth the effort because it takes you to the very highest point of the peninsula, offering a view of both branches of the lake that you simply cannot see from anywhere else. For the active traveller, you should seek out Pescalo. This is a tiny, ancient fishing hamlet tucked away on the opposite side of the hill, facing the Lecco branch. It is famously calm and sheltered, making it the best spot on the lake for kayaking. You can rent a kayak there and paddle right under the cliffs of the villas, seeing the grandeur of the buildings from the water level, which is how they were meant to be seen. Or, if you prefer to just relax, you can visit the Lido di Bellagio for a swim, or take the tourist train to the hamlet of San Giovanni. In San Giovanni, you will find a hidden gem, the Museum of Navigation Instruments. It is located in an old tower house and displays a private collection of telescopes, compasses, and solar clocks that have been used by explorers for centuries. It is a fascinating reminder of the lake's history of boat travel, but ultimately the best activity in Bellagio is the simplest one. Il dolce far niente. Order a coffee, sit by the lake, and watch the ferries come and go.
Tej ulicy to byliśmy.
Walking up from the harbour, the narrow streets suddenly open up into the Piazza della Chiesa, and here we find the spiritual heart of the village, the Basilica of San Giacomo. You can tell just by looking at the stonework that this building is ancient. It was built between the 11th and 12th centuries by the Mastri Comacini, the famous masters of Como, a guild of stonemasons who were renowned across medieval Europe for their skill. It is a perfect example of Romanesque Lombard architecture, solid, grounded, and built to last. Notice the bell tower. It looks a bit different from the rest of the church, doesn't it? That is because it was likely part of the town's defensive fortifications originally, a watchtower that was later converted for religious use. Inside, the atmosphere changes completely. It is quiet, cool, and rich with art. In early the 1900s, the church was restored to remove later Baroque additions and bring it back to its original Romanesque simplicity. But it still holds incredible treasures. You will see beautiful mosaics from the 20th century and a stunning altar from the 1500s. Now, let's step into the true living quarters of the village, the Borgo. While the lakefront is for arriving and being seen, this upper street, via Giuseppe Garibaldi, is where the town actually lives. This is the main artery of the historic centre. If you look at the layout, it runs parallel to the shore, sitting just above the harbour. Centuries ago, this wasn't just a shopping street, it was a fortress. The locals still call the area near the top of the stairs Il Fosso, the ditch. That is because, in medieval times, a defensive moat actually ran right through here to protect the castle that once stood on the hill. Today, that defensive line has been replaced by a different kind of treasure.
Scoop it up.
This street is the home of Bellagio's artisans. You will find shops here that have been in the same families for generations, woodworkers who have been carving olive wood since the 1800s, glassblowers and silk merchants.
Ciao, ciao Mariela.
It feels like a maze, and that is by design. These narrow, winding lanes were built to confuse invaders and to block the strong winds coming off the lake. But now, they mostly serve to trap the smell of fresh coffee and pastries, drawing you deeper into the village. It is crowded, yes. But if you look up above the shop signs, you will see the shutters of the homes where locals still live, watching the world pass by below.
Questa è la storia qui. E questo è più bello. E mi piace questa. Che adoro sono ascoltando. Adesso vai come se non fosse un buio. Guarda.
Quindi ora vediamo dove lo faccio scendere.
Now we are going to leave the main tourist trail behind and take a path that most day trippers miss entirely. This is the Salita Cappuccini. If the other staircases in town are for commerce and shopping, this one is for solitude. The name comes from the Capuchin monks. Centuries ago, this entire promontory wasn't covered in luxury hotels. It was a place of meditation and prayer. The monks lived in a monastery at the top of the hill, a building that eventually became part of the famous Villa Serbelloni, now owned by the Rockefeller Foundation. As we climb, you will notice the atmosphere changes. It is quieter here. The walls on either side hide private gardens and olive groves. This is the path that connects the main village of Bellagio to the other side of the peninsula, leading down to the tiny hamlet of Pescalo. It is a bit of a workout. Salita does mean climb after all, but the reward is the perspective. From here, you are looking specifically at the Lecco branch of the lake. It is rougher, darker and more dramatic than the Como side. It is the view that supposedly inspired Leonardo da Vinci when he was sketching the background landscapes for his paintings. So take your time on these stones. We are walking the same path that monks, farmers and fishermen have used for hundreds of years to cross from one sea to the other.
Non uscire dal porto lo stesso da qua, Sì, ma se la apri con la tranquillata, sta prima non uscire un po' da davanti qua, adesso. No, abbiamo sempre mandarci un stupido qua, se viene. Non vedo luce.
And here we are. This is Pescalo. If you felt like the main town was a bit busy, this is your antidote. It is a tiny, ancient fishing hamlet tucked away on the other side of the promontory. For centuries, this wasn't a place for tourists. It was a working village. In fact, in the 1700s, this tiny harbour was one of the most important fish markets on the entire lake, supplying food to the surrounding towns. Notice how different the water looks here. That is because we are now facing the Lecco branch of Lake Como, while the Como branch, where the big luxury villas are, is known for its elegance. This side is known for its drama. Look at those mountains across the water. Those are the Gring Mountains. They are steeper, rockier, and wilder. The light hits this side of the lake differently, often staying sunny in the morning while the main town is still waking up. Because it is sheltered from the strong northern winds by the hill we just climbed. The water here is often glass calm. It is a favourite spot for kayakers and locals who just want to practice the Italian art of the sweetness of doing nothing. It feels like a secret, doesn't it? A place where the clock stopped ticking a long time ago. As we walk these streets, you might be wondering, why here? What is it about this specific corner of the world that attracts billionaires, superstars, and Hollywood directors? It isn't just the beauty, it is the privacy. Lake Como has become the ultimate hideaway for the jet set because it offers something money usually can't buy: anonymity. The geography here works in their favour. Many of the most exclusive villas are built directly on the water, protected by high walls on the street side and visible only from a boat. It allows superstars like George Clooney, who famously put this lake back on the American map, or Richard Branson and the Versace family, to live the Dolce Vita without the paparazzi constantly at their door. But even if you haven't visited, you have definitely seen this place. Bellagio and its surroundings are the backdrop for some of the cinema's most luxurious moments. You might recognise Villa del Balbianello from Star Wars: Attack of the Clones, where Anakin and Padme fall in love. Or perhaps you remember James Bond recovering here in Casino Royale, or the heist planning in Ocean's 12. Filmmakers choose this location for the same reason the aristocrats did centuries ago. It doesn't need special effects. The elegance here is real. The strict building codes mean you won't find modern skyscrapers or neon signs ruining the skyline. It preserves an old money aesthetic that feels frozen in time. Owning a home here is more than just a real estate investment. It is buying a piece of history. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey. If you enjoyed this moment of calm and want to explore more beautiful corners of the world with us, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel. It really supports the work we do here. Until then, stay curious, and we will see you in the next video.